Welcome back to EFD, where for today's top 10 we're looking at 10 small teams that took on the Giants. Let's get into it. 10. Montpellier. This may have been a one-off league title for Montpellier, but the story here was about more than just a win for the underdogs. In July 2011, the Qatar Investment Authority completed their buyout of Paris Saint-Germain, which has led to almost a decade of complete domestic dominance. But that wasn't before French football had one last hurrah. Only promoted to Ligue 1 in 2009, Montpellier finished the 2010-11 campaign in 14th place with just 12 victories, 32 goals and 47 points. But this team of relative unknowns featuring Younes Belhanda, Remy Cabella and Olivier Giroud would take everyone by surprise the next season, by more than doubling their number of wins and goals on the way to 82 points, 3 more than newly minted PSG. 21 goals for Giroud that campaign saw him win the Golden Boot, and his 30 goal involvements was only bettered by PSG's Nene and Lille's Eden Hazard, who would join Giroud in moving to London that summer. Montpellier's next season, a 9th place finish and an embarrassing Champions League campaign, picking up just 2 points from Arsenal, Olympiacos and Schalke. But they'll always have that league title. 9. Lincoln City. Now, we're pretty sure many of you will remember Lincoln City's famous FA Cup run back in the 2016-17 campaign. The Imps were relegated from the Football League in 2011 and became a lower mid-table club clinging to safety in the 5th tier. Then in 2016, along came the Cowley brothers, who in their first season for Lincoln took them back into the professional leagues. But that's not what the season was remembered for primarily. After facing fellow non-league sides Guiseley and Altrincham in their first 2 fixtures in the FA Cup, Lincoln faced increasingly harder opposition as they progressed. Another championship team was then dispatched in Brighton before the dream tie, a trip to Turf Moor for Premier League Burnley. A scrappy game was decided by an 89th minute goal from Lincoln centre-back Sean Raggett, all the more surprising considering Burnley had lost just 3 of their previous 28 home matches. And their reward was one of the biggest ties of all, away to Arsenal. Sure, they might have lost 5-0 to the eventual winners, but they were already heroes. It will surely be a while until another non-league team progresses to the quarter-finals of the FA Cup. Just a quick reminder before we go on to our next underdog to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss another great FD video. Trust me, they're all very good. 8. Getafe. Up next we have Getafe, a small team on the edge of Madrid that only really entered the football consciousness in the last 10 years. Only founded in 1983, debuting in Spain's 7th tier, it took Getafe 21 years to reach the promised lands of La Liga. And while their first stint in the top flight was unremarkable, finishing in the top half just 4 times in 12 years, they're really kicking on now. Relegated in 2016 but bouncing straight back the following campaign after hiring well-travelled manager Jose Bordalas, Getafe confounded critics to finish 8th in 2018. As with many clubs on this list, their success is down to a solid team ethic instead of relying on overpriced superstars. The chances they create are often few and far between but high quality, meaning the likes of 32-year-old Angel and 37-year-old Jorge Molina are reliable in front of goal. Last season this led to a 5th place finish, their highest to date, missing out on Champions League football by just 2 points. And this term, as well as a run to the Europa League knockouts where they defeated Ajax, Getafe find themselves in a similar spot with a real chance of dining at Europe's top table. 7. Parma. Everyone knows about Parma's storied history, regularly ranking them amongst Italy's elite, making their recent plight and subsequent resurgence even more noteworthy. However, their stature in the Italian game before the 90s was somewhat insignificant. The Giallo-Blues' biggest honour was the Serie B title in 1925, with the following season being their last in the top flight until their period of success 70 years later. Investment from parent company Parmalat in the late 1980s changed the club's direction. The dairy company's fortunes pushed them up to Serie A, and over the next decade, the likes of Gigi Buffon, Fabio Cannavaro, Hernan Crespo and Lilian Thuram called the Stadio Ennio Tardini home. The club didn't fall out of the top 6 from 1990 to 2001, competed in European competition right up until 2005, and won all 8 of their major titles in this spell. So what did they win? First came the Coppa Italia in 1992, then the Cup Winners' Cup in 93, followed by the UEFA Cup 2 seasons later. They'd go on to win 2 more Coppas Italia, 1 more UEFA Cup in 1999, and a couple of Super Cups thrown in for good measure. Parmalat's bankruptcy in 2003 saw Parma's stock fall, but even that led to another fairy tale story just 2 years ago. 6. Les Herbiers. There's a chance you haven't heard of Les Herbiers Vendée football, and we can't blame you for that. Les Noirs Rouges are based in a small town in the northwest of France and are a nondescript amateur sports club, at points spending seasons as far down as the 7th tier. But they had their moment of fame in 2018, as whilst in the 3rd tier they reached the final of the Coupe de France, just the 2nd team in history to do so from that level of the pyramid. Entering in the 5th round of 14, Les Herbiers somehow managed to avoid any Ligue 1 sides until meeting PSG in the final. However, they did knock out former top tier sides Auxerre and Lyon in the round of 16 and quarterfinals respectively, lucking out with a tie in the semis against fellow national team FC Chambly. They sold 15,000 tickets for the final, about the population of their town, and were treated to Angel Di Maria, Kylian Mbappe and Thiago Silva, who all featured in a 2-0 victory for the biggest club in the country. The high of the occasion was short-lived, however, as just 3 days later they were relegated to the 4th tier, the same level as PSG's reserve team. 5. Deportivo Alavés. Known as the 3rd team of the Basque Country, Deportivo Alavés are firmly in the shadows of Athletic Bilbao and Real Sociedad. Los Baboseros would regularly fluctuate between the lower divisions of Spanish football, but in the 1990s rose from the 4th tier to La Liga for their first taste of top-flight football in 42 years. And after narrowly avoiding relegation in 1999, they then managed a 6th place finish to earn their first foray into Europe. And was that a ride to remember? With a fairly anonymous side, the most high-profile player being Jordi Cruyff, the team from Vitoria-Gasteiz stormed to the UEFA Cup final. They came from 3-1 down to defeat an Inter Milan side featuring Alvaro Recoba and Christian Vieri 5-3 on aggregate in the quarters, before beating Kaiserslautern 9-2 in the semis. In fact, Alavés scored 31 goals en route to the final, more than double their opponents Liverpool managed. And that didn't stop in the showpiece match, as the Spanish side fell 5-2 after extra time to their English counterparts, in a game that very quickly became a modern European classic. This remains the highlight of Alavés' history, with the side still yet to win a major trophy. For that one season at least, they had every right to dream. 4. Bournemouth. Upon their promotion to the Premier League in 2015, Bournemouth quickly became every English football fan's second club. A team from a sleepy town on the south coast had won hearts throughout the country for their meteoric rise from near extinction to the biggest league in world football. The reality is that Bournemouth should be nowhere near the top. It took 88 years from their 1899 foundation to reach just the 2nd tier of English football, before financial difficulty in 2007 led to their relegation to League 2, where despite a 17-point deduction, they maintained their Football League status under a certain Eddie Howe. Promotion to League 1 followed in 2010 and a return to the 2nd tier in 2013. With a ground capacity of just over 11,000, less than the likes of Gateshead, Southend United and Tranmere Rovers, the Cherries rake in a fraction of the money bigger sides make in matchday revenue, but have toppled both Chelsea and Man United at Dean Court. The club may be tiny, but have shown they are more than capable of competing with the best in the Premier League, and until this season had never truly been threatened with relegation, achieving a high of 9th place in 2017. 3. Independiente del Valle. Time for a brief trip to South America, but we're not looking at a Brazilian or Argentinian team here. Independiente del Valle are a side based on the outskirts of Quito in Ecuador. Los Negriazules were founded in 1958 but didn't reach the top tier Serie A until 2010, and that's when they really started to punch above their weight. Built on a model of developing players to sell on, the most notable being former Swansea winger Jefferson Montero, this tiny outfit managed to finish as Serie A runners-up in 2013. 3 years later, and the club were competing in the Copa Libertadores, South America's premier football competition. It was impressive enough that they reached the quarterfinals, but they even knocked out reigning champions River Plate to get there. They went on to knock out River's arch-rivals Boca Juniors in the semis, before narrowly falling to Colombia's Atlético Nacional in the showpiece fixture. But in 2019 they went one step further, sort of. Playing in the Copa Sudamericana, their equivalent of the Europa League, they knocked out Argentina's Independiente as well as Corinthians on the way to the title. Not bad at all for the club's first ever trophy. 2. Atalanta. Atalanta have built themselves a reputation over the last few years as a fast-paced attacking outfit capable of scoring an obscene number of goals, but it hasn't always been like that. To this day, the only trophy they have ever won is the 1963 Coppa Italia, and had only achieved a 5th place finish once, all the way back in 1948. After all, the town of Bergamo has a population of just 120,000, not too dissimilar to Lincoln, who we spoke about earlier. And the Guis Stadium holds just 21,000, which just edges into the 40 biggest stadiums in Italy. But their fan base has kept on growing in recent years, as their style of play under Gianpiero Gasperini saw them end last season as the top scorers in the league with 77 goals, and this season, still with 13 games left to play, they've netted 70. And their improvement under Gasperini as a whole is remarkable. They've gone from an irrelevant team that regularly battled relegation to one that people clamour to watch. 4th place, 7th, and then a 3rd last campaign, Atalanta even became the first team to win a match at the San Siro in the Champions League since 2012. Needless to say, they've come a long way. 1. Villarreal. Villarreal have always been one of La Liga's more underrated teams, quietly going about their business and achieving consistent if unremarkable results. Just a 45-minute drive from Valencia's Mestalla Stadium, Villarreal's home, El Madrigal, can hold almost 25,000, which is incredibly half their town's population. And considering their reputation now, it's possibly more surprising that they didn't even play in La Liga until 1998. A year prior, local businessman Fernando Roig purchased El Submarino Amarillo at a time when they averaged a crowd of just 3,000. A shrewd transfer policy that picked on La Liga misfits and South American talent, such as Pepe Reina, Fabrizio Colocini and Juan Roman Riquelme, saw them qualify for and ultimately reach the semi-finals of the 2003-4 UEFA Cup. But it didn't end there. Manuel Pellegrini, with a side led by Man United flop Diego Forlan, reached the semi-finals of the Champions League in 2006, and in 2008 achieved their highest ever league position of 2nd, featuring the likes of Diego Godin, Robert Pires and Santi Cazorla. They may have suffered a relegation since then, but are still regularly finding themselves challenging for the Champions League spots. Proof that a good model can work wonders in La Liga. So those were our 10 small teams that took on the Giants, but what did you make of it? Was there anyone we missed out? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, why not click on screen right now, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're new to the channel, and we'll see you next time.